Okay, so we have solved this inequality. B minus 3/4 is more than or equal to negative 1/4. So the first thing we have to do is say that they're subtracting 3/4. So we add 3/4. Anything I do to one side of the equation, I do to the other. I have a positive and a negative. The biggest fraction is a positive, so I know that my answer is going to be positive. I have a positive and a negative, so I subtract. 3 minus 1 is 2 over 4. I simplify it, it's 1/2. I do not switch this because I'm not multiplying or dividing by a negative number. I'm adding and subtracting. Then my arrow is going to go this way. It's going to be closed and it's going to show it as 1/2. B is more than or equal to 1/2. So there's nothing to solve, we're just graphing it. It's a closed circle because it's more than or equal to. We put a 1/2 right here and our arrow goes this way. U minus 1.7 is more than negative 6.2. They're subtracting 1/7, so I add 1/7. This clears out on this side. What's left is a U. And then I have a negative and I have a positive. The biggest integer or biggest decimal wins the sign, so my answer is going to be negative. And then I have a negative and a positive, so I know that I have to subtract these two. (4.5), and my answer is negative because 6.2 is a bigger decimal. And then it's going to be open. It's going to go this way, and this is going to be negative 4.5. Okay, 5/9 on this side. So they're adding 2/9, you're going to subtract 2/9. Anything you do to one side, you do to the other. This cancels each other out. And then I have a 5 minus 2. This is the bigger integer. It's a positive. This is a negative, so I subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3/9. And then, because the C is over here, and only because the C is over here, when I go, I don't flip this, but when I go to graph it, I just change the direction of my arrow because the C is over here. We do not flip the sign though. The sign stays the same. And it is an open circle because it is not more than or less than or equal to. All right, next one is, just gonna do it off of the page. I think we did enough of those. Okay. We are going to go to W over 15 is more than or equal to negative 9.6. So they're dividing, so we are going to multiply. I am not multiplying by a negative number, so I do not switch my inequality sign. This cancels each other out. What is left on this side is W. And then I do 9.6 times 15 is 144. And I know that it's negative because I have a negative and a positive. When I'm multiplying a negative and a positive, my answer is negative. Next one is k over -4 equals 28, and it's also equal to. So they're dividing by -4. I'm going to multiply by -4, and I'm going to switch my sign immediately because I'm multiplying or dividing by a negative number. And when I multiply or divide by a negative number, I always switch the sign. So I'm going to do 28 times 4 is 112. And I have a positive and a negative. So my answer is negative. And then what's left on this side is k. All right. (34.4) is more than -4.3d. So they're multiplying by -4.3. I'm going to divide. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. And because I'm dividing by a negative number, I have to switch the direction of my inequality. Then I do 34.4 divided by 4.3. It is 8. And then my final step is to say I have a positive and negative, so it's -8. Okay, next one is -9p is more than -81. They're multiplying by -9, so I divide by -9. I have a negative and a negative, so my answer is positive. 81 and I have to flip my sign because I am dividing by a negative number. 81 divided by 9 is 9. Okay, next one is 3/8 m, and then we have 2/9 over here. They're multiplying by 3/8, so I use the reciprocal of 8/3, and anything I do to one side, I do to the other. M is left on this side. 2 times 8 is 16. 9 times 3 is 27. I have a positive and a positive, so my answer is positive. And I did not multiply or divide by a negative number, so my sign stays the same. Okay, next one is z over 3 plus 4 is less than or equal to 7. First thing I do is take the 4. They're adding 4, so I subtract 4. What's left on this side is z over 3. 7 minus 4 is 3. And then I have z over 3. They're dividing, so I multiply. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. I did not multiply or divide by a negative number, so my inequality stays the same. This cancels each other out. Z equals, z is less than or equal to 9. Next one is 30 plus 3a. On this side is less than 51. So first thing I do, they're adding 30, so I subtract 30. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. What's left on this side is 3a. 51 minus 30 is 21. I had a positive number and I had a negative number. My biggest integer was a positive, so I subtract it, and my answer is positive. Now I'm left with 3a is less than, let me make this a little brighter, than 21. They're multiplying by 3. I divide by 3. This cancels each other out. What's left on this side is a, and then 21 divided by 3 is 7. I do not switch my signs because I divide it by a positive number. Next example is 2, and then we have parentheses. G plus 6 is less than or equal to 10. I distribute this 2, so it's 2G plus 12 is what it distributes to. And then they're adding 12, so I subtract 12. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels each other out. 2G is less than or equal to, I have a positive number and a negative number, so my answer is going to be positive. That is the biggest, negative. That's the biggest integer. And then I have a positive and a negative, so I subtract. So it is -2. Now I have 2G and I have -2. They're multiplying, so I divide. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. G is left on this side. We have -2 over 2 is -1. All right, 10 minus m over 6 is less than or equal to 8. They're adding 10. I subtract 10. What I do to one side, I do to the other. This one is left with -m over 6. And then this side is -10 and 8. I have a negative and positive, so I know I'm going to subtract. My biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is a negative. 10 minus 8 is 2, so that is -2. Now I have -m over 6. So I know that when I'm dividing, I have to take this and I have to take this. They're dividing by -6, so I am going to multiply by -6. I know I have to flip my sign because I'm multiplying by a negative number. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels each other out. What's left on this side is m. 2 negatives make a positive, and then 2 times 6 is 12. M is more than or equal to +12. Okay, so that is it. This was in the review assessment. It is in the back after the chapter review and the chapter test. There is another link to these. Okay, and that is all of them. So here are our very important reminders. You are going to write them down and remember them. If you have a positive and a negative and you're adding or subtracting, biggest integer wins the sign. If you have a positive and a positive, or a negative and a negative, you are going to add the numbers together. If you have a positive number and a negative number, or a negative and a positive number, and you're adding and subtracting, positive and negative integers, you are going to subtract them. If you are multiplying or dividing positive and negative integers, a positive times a positive equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive. A positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, equal a negative. So these are important to remember when you're adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing integers. The next thing that you have to remember is if you are solving algebra and you have to multiply or divide by a negative number, you flip the inequality. If the variable is on the right side, like 5 is more than x, so it's on the left side, here's the variable. You do not flip the inequality, but you change the direction when graphing the equation. So, an example of this is -5 plus 12. Biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is a positive number. I have a positive and a negative. So I'm going to subtract. Hello? Hi, Leanna. Can you speak to my husband, Kevin? Hold on 1 second. The client.
Hello?
Then biggest integer wins the sign, so my answer is going to be positive. I have a positive and a negative, so I subtract. 12 minus 5 is 7. So that's an example of that one. This one is 7 times 7 is positive 49. -7 times -7 is positive 49. And then positive 7 and -7 equals -49. -7 plus positive 7 equals -49. This one is -3d. They're multiplying, so I divide by -3. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. Because I'm multiplying or dividing by -3, I flip my inequality. What's left on this side is d. We have a positive and a negative, and I know that when I'm dividing by a positive and negative, my answer is going to be negative. 9 divided by 3 is 3.